Welcome to Get Your House in Order. I'm Elke Rubach, and this is a space for the conversations people avoid, the ones about money, structure, leadership, and where we want to get people to take action. Today, I'm honored to welcome Dr. Cynthia Benson-Mercer, who is an executive coach, human capital strategist, best-selling author, and overall an eminence. She spends her work helping leaders, especially women, reclaim their agency in their careers, investments, and influence. Today, we're talking about one of the most neglected assets, you, and how when you don't invest in yourself and your human capital, everything else collapses. We'll weave in how financial ownership and personal agency go hand in hand, and why waiting for someone else, an employer, a pension, a government, to do the work for you is too dangerous. If you believe that your path is already mapped out by others, this episode is for you. Cynthia, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so lovely to be with you.
Well, it's an honor to have you. Let's dive in because we have so many things to cover. Your journey, it spans from organizational psychology, leadership, coaching. How did you land in human capital strategy? What does that even mean? Why does it matter? And how do we involve that with financial freedom?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I wish that it had been some very intentional process where I had this vision of what that would be at some point. But like many of the person listening and the people that I've studied, it sort of happened a bit more organically. But it really comes from a place of I fell in love with business really early in my career. I loved everything about data and financial reporting and leadership. I just sort of fell in love with the essence of business. And what I learned early on is that in 99% of organizations, it's the people that ultimately bring that organizational vision, right, to fruition. And so for me, human capital strategy is really this bridge of understanding that to have a successful business, organization, et cetera, you need to place the right people with their respective human capital in the right roles. And then coupled with that, you mentioned that I've done work. I do work with both men and women, but did a particular amount of research around professional women, is that women in particular tend to put off investing in themselves. So, how do we go introspective a bit more and be a lot more proactive about our future?
I often tell people, if you have the goose that lays the golden eggs, how would you look after the goose, right? And it's you. And I think it's in our protective nature and look after the kids and the spouse and the business and the career and your friends and the world that you end up taking on so much that you're the last one and you end up giving from a place of emptiness and then you burn out.
Absolutely. Elke, one of the things that we found in our research for my first book, Now Near Next, we studied women around the globe, 5 race ethnicities, 4 countries, a 25-year age span, multiple industries, et cetera. And the single common denominator among all of them, which you just alluded to, is this notion of they were not as intentional in their career planning, number one. Number two, to a person at some point along the way, they became restless, right? Stuck, stagnant, that feeling of, gosh, I have more to add. I have more value to bring. I have more talent to give, and kind of left behind. And here's where it connects to what you just said about where's the financial connection. Men historically, and by the way, with all respect to men, right? My whole positioning is let's take a page out of their playbook. This is not a shaming or an indictment of men. It's a celebration of what they're doing. But men are looking up, they're looking forward, and they are actively working on their next aspirational goal, raising their hands, putting it into the universe. Women have been conditioned to put your head down, work hard, and wait to get tapped. And so what happens is, as you alluded to, as we are raising children or in relationships or invested in our community or our church or our business or what have you, we're so busy pouring into everyone else that it's a really convenient option to put my head down, work hard, and wait to get tapped. It's like, cool, I can do that. Then I can use all this other energy for everyone around me. But as you and I both know, the corporate environment doesn't work that way. Business doesn't work that way. And so while I'm down with my head down, working hard, laboring away, my wonderful male counterparts are looking up and looking forward and racing past me. So what happens? It's a compounding effect. And why does this matter to men? It matters to men because more than 50% of households are dual income, right? It matters to men because they want the whole family to thrive, particularly if they have a significant other that works outside the home. And we find that, our salary increases are less, our 401ks, our investments are less because we're not investing and accelerating our financial capital at the same rate as those around us because we're leaving our agency to others.
And that leads to my second point, human capital meeting financial capital. So often we think of wealth in dollars and assets, but you frame wealth in terms of human capital too. Explain that relationship and how are they inseparable?
Yeah. So one of the things, and for some people, referring to human beings as human capital can initiate initially sort of a cringe or a pause. I'm not suggesting that people are purely commodities for businesses to take advantage of. What I am suggesting is that each of us, you, me, the person listening, has our own set of human capital assets, right? I have unique gifts, talents, skills, knowledge, background, experience, and abilities that I have the opportunity to bring to an organization. That is my value proposition. That is my human capital. And we need to think about that and invest in that with the same rigor and intentionality that we invest in our financial portfolios. And so there's two sides to this coin. For the person listening that's saying, oh my gosh, I've never thought about my gifts and talents and background experience, et cetera, as human capital. Well, you should be. And there's a value associated with that. And there should be expectations around what that's worth and where you're going to bring that to bear. On the flip side, for the leader that's listening, we also need to think about what if we were to invest the same rigor and discipline in our human capital portfolio that we do in our financial portfolio, right? If you have an underperforming asset in your financial portfolio, you move it along. As hard as that is to do as leaders, sometimes we need to have a compassionate bus stop with somebody who is not performing. Same time, if you've got a high potential financial asset in your portfolio, something that promises to have big returns, has all of the potential, we go in, right? We double down on that. In business, we fail to do that oftentimes with our human capital. We sort of have just the few that are in front of us all the time, and that's where we're investing our time and attention. And we sort of dismiss those that there's this amazing potential for them to do exponential things. And so for me, whether you're on the individual side of the equation or on the leadership side of the equation, both things converge. As an individual, when I value my human capital, I put myself out there and I raise the financial wealth building. And when I'm a leader and I see it that way and I invest in the human capital around me, I have higher performing returns, right? It goes right to the bottom line.
So you're talking about alignment not only from a business planning perspective, but also values that match your vision.
Exactly.
Am I wrong?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a client right now who is in a situation where she has been really disengaged, or I should say, disenchanted is a better word, right? With her current organization. She's been looked past for promotions. She's not been invested in, et cetera. So she's been looking outside the organization. As fate would have it, they opened up an opportunity for a promotion in her current organization. And on the same day, she was offered an external opportunity and a promotion inside the organization where she is. Now, if she stays, she gets a bigger title, she gets more money, right? All the things that she's been working in her career. But here's the thing, it's too little too late. Where was the value associated with investing her up to this point? And now suddenly that she has an external opportunity, everybody's, diving in and trying to save her. But there's not an alignment with her purpose and values. She wants to be part of an organization that sees investment in people as not only a value that's on the wall, but one that they actually, exercise.
Yeah. And that comes back to my world too. I tell people you need to own your financial future. You need to really take personal agency and figure out what's important to you and not just, let time go by. But, it takes time and you can only say so many things so many times until it clicks, right?
Right.
So tell me a story where you're telling me that this lady now is going to move, I hope.
Yes, me too.
Where the values are aligned.
Yeah.
But tell me a story when someone undervalued him or herself in skill, role, or voice, and paid a steep price down the line. What happens or what breaks when human capital is uninvested or underinvested?
Well, and unfortunately, it's happening regularly, and with you hate to call it an epidemic, but I'm telling you that the engagement level of employees around the world is at kind of an all-time low. And I think it gets back to that very thing. It goes back to the conversation I've had with the person I'm talking about. It's, are you going to sell your soul to have more of the same, make more money, have a more sexy title, right? But at the end of the day, the way you've been treated up to this point isn't magically going to change overnight. And so what does that do to your mental health, to your physical health? This is a woman who has really struggled because she works, 15, 18 hours a day and has two little ones at home. There's a breaking point for all of us where we just burn out, rust out, can't take it anymore. And I think that's where we begin to realize the mental health challenges that creates begins to take a giant toll. And we see people leave. I've seen people leave without something else lined up.
You know what I'm hearing too? I call myself a reformed lawyer. So many lawyers have the golden handcuffs.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
And probably that's across the board. People who, because of the increase, because of the sexy title, because of the whatever, then there's a point that they're literally stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so then what happens if you're on the organizational side, right? Because I always like to speak to both sides, because many of your listeners probably wear both hats, right? They're listening from, how does this affect me? But they're also listening as an entrepreneur, business owner, leader, et cetera, is that when that happens, what's the toll taken on the organization as well? When you have somebody retire and stay because leaving is too expensive, and so they retire and stay. And that happens sometimes when we're not giving the individual what they want. They've reached beyond the past point of burnout. And so now they're just like, phoning it in, right? Quiet quitting, I think, has been the popular term, rather than having candid conversations about where somebody can be relevant, where they can show up. I mean, that's been the latest thing that I've been talking a lot about, is that there's so much quiet firing happening right now, where instead of having a direct conversation, we just sort of abandon that person, sideline that person, dismiss that person and hope eventually they'll get the hint and go.
Yeah. But does it start, like, the more you think about it, the conversation has to start with yourself. You need to sit down and be honest with yourself and say, something's bothering me, some things. And in fairness, not everybody can afford it, right? Some people are just making ends meet, but those who can, which are usually the people who listen to this podcast, if there's something bugging you, and I've done it and I've gone through it, and you shift and you pivot and you try, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and you surround yourself with the right people and you're intentional about it. If you don't have the conversation with yourself, how do you expect someone to know that something's off?
Right. 100%. So two things about that. One, you have to put your aspirations into the universe. And again, this gets back to the data we found with women in particular. Men generally more readily put their aspirations into the universe, quick to raise their hands. Again, so many women worldwide are conditioned to put your head down, work hard, and wait to get tapped. And I always tell the folks that I work with, people aren't mind readers. And if you're not looking up and looking forward and sharing with somebody what your aspirational goals are, you cannot expect that they're going to, you're putting your entire agency in the lap of somebody else rather than, taking control.
I mean, and then now I'm going into psychology here, but as, a career woman and, mother and all these things, it is really hard to ask for help. Or say, I need. So when you work with people, like,
right,
how do you push, or how do you motivate them to say, hey, I need help, or I want help, or I need,
right. Yeah. It's interesting. We addressed that in the very first chapter of Now Near Next. And the reason is, while the book is focused on how to help ambitious, overextended career women to find and move toward their next, the very first thing that comes up is, I don't have the time to even think about that, right? It's like, oh, I get it. I love that, Cynthia, but I don't have the time for that. So we start right out of the gate with embrace grace, boundaries, and asking for help and accepting help. So there's a couple of things that we talk about from a framework perspective that the listener can take today and go put in action, right? Number one is identify the people that are happy and willing and embrace wanting to help you. And think about what it is specifically that they're uniquely good at, right? So don't ask your sister that is terribly unorganized and very messy by nature to help you with something that requires high attention to detail, right? Like, match it up so that people can be successful. And then secondly, once you hand off to your teenager to empty the dishwasher, or somebody to fold the laundry or prep the salad or whatever it might be, let it go. Because, and this is where I'm guilty, like, I'm the person that goes back in and restacks the dishwasher because it wasn't done like I like it, right? You do that once or twice and the person says, you ought to just do it yourself because clearly I'm not meeting your expectations. So you do have to let go. The other framework is, it's very quickly, if you think about a 4-quadrant, think about the Y axis, the vertical axis being things that are important to me that I value. I'm good at it. I like it. It's fun. It's on target with where I'm going. And the X axis as being, I perceive it's valuable externally. It's important to the school, my employer, my neighborhood, what have you. That upper right, it's valued to both me and how I perceive externally. That's where you spend your time. As women in particular, we put everything in that box. Then if we really have to make a decision on what not to do, we look at the top left, which is what we love, but we don't think has high external value. That's not the place to pull from. That's exercise. That's making your kids lunches. That's things that fill your cup. Don't give those things up. That bottom right, it doesn't feel good to me. I'm not good at it. I don't enjoy doing it, but I see it has external value. That's where you have to get creative. Can I delegate? Can I pen a check? Right? I wasn't good at volunteering in my kids when they were young in their schools. I didn't like little snotty, gluey first graders that weren't my own, right? I wasn't good at that, but I could pen a $10 check for school supplies and give a different way, right? And then the bottom left, no is a complete sentence. And women in particular struggle to say no. We embrace a lot more volume over value.
100%. I like it. Yeah. So that's where, okay, so then there's the next intersection.
Right.
Personal agency versus external dependency.
Yeah.
So what happens when we outsource our career growth, our skills, our influence to employers or systems? And why is that a blind spot in financial planning?
Yeah, the biggest challenge from a financial planning perspective is because the moment we put our agency around our career growth, our development, our next in the hands of an employer or a boss or anyone else, is that we're on somebody else's timeline and we're on somebody else's radar that may not be thinking about us on a regular basis. And so the through line that I always talk about is start investing in your future today. In other words, do your day job with excellence. You can't take your eye off the ball in terms of your day job. But every day you can do some small thing that moves you toward your aspirational next. And so I have a framework called the 7-minute pivot, and actually relates back when you said that introspective, you have to start with you first. So 7 minutes, right? Everyone has 7 minutes. It's more than 5, it's less than 10. And we know neurologically that amount of time to focus can create so much clarity. And so here's what I recommend. Now, for the person listening, this isn't your spiritual reflection. This isn't meditation. This isn't manifestation, right? Not throwing shade on any of those things, but that's not what it is. This is action. So for the person that goes, oh no, we're going down the woo-woo. Yeah, we're going down the woo-woo path. We're not going down the woo-woo path. No, what this is, you literally set a timer on your phone, on your oven, what have you. Set a 7-minute timer. You get out a paper and pen, because we know that the act of putting pen to paper actually has a greater impact on our neuroplasticity and how we think and frame things and getting it out of our head and onto paper. And in that moment, you ask yourself this question: what is standing in the way of my aspirational next? And for 7 minutes, you journal. And you're asking yourself why at least 3 times. And here's why. You might say, well, I don't have time. Well, I have 6 minutes and 45 seconds to go. And I've already decided, well, the reason that's standing in my way is time. Why? Well, because of this. Why? So you keep asking why so that you can get underneath the thing that's underneath the thing, right? But here's where the magic happens. At the end of the 7 minutes, you're choosing one small thing you can do today to incrementally move slightly toward that new direction. Not a giant leap, not trying to do it all at one time, a tiny thing. It could be sending an email to a mentor. It could be making a couple of edits to your LinkedIn profile. It could be any number of things, but it's one small thing. And the reality is, when you do that 7-minute pivot every day for a year, 2,555 minutes, you can change the direction and the trajectory of where you're going dramatically by taking those baby steps. So that's really important for the person like me that doesn't want to sit in their feels, right? It's only 7 minutes. It's also helpful for the person that can't get out of their feels, because it creates okay, the timer went off, pick a thing to do and move on.
And something I find fascinating, and I think we all go through this, is I don't have time.
Yeah.
No, you choose not to make the time.
Right.
Because when it becomes dramatic enough, urgent enough, annoying enough,
Right.
painful enough, you make the time.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Take 7 minutes
And
out of the doom scrolling, right? I mean,
100%. And I would think 7 minutes. I read your concept and I love it. But if you can't start with seven, start with three. And then go to five. And then go to seven. Then when you realize you're at 25 and you lost track of time.
yeah. Yeah.
And I find that happens a lot with it's very funny. I'm totally against trashing men. Oh, we're gonna destroy
Same.
men.
Same.
But I find, because I think we all need each other, and it'll be a much better place if we're all nice to each other. But regardless, I find when women try to get a hold of their or really get their finances under control, they have the blank screen feeling, right? And you're like, start by reading a little bit. It's
Right.
not that you're dumb, you just haven't done it, and
Right.
practice and practice, and little by little. Like, I wasn't born knowing what I know, but I just chose to learn and I continue learning. And what I love about what I do is that you never end your learning. You, like, if I think the day you stop learning, you die.
Yes.
Right. But give yourself some credit and really give yourself some value, and 7 minutes to figure out what you want to do next is not a lot, particularly when you think the inaction is so expensive.
So expensive. So expensive. And, and one of the things, I love what you do and where you focus, because you would think in this day and age, more women, and maybe this is just naivete on my part, but I was sort of under the impression, gosh, more women are more aware of their financial future, more aware of things like how to invest, et cetera. My own daughter, right, growing up with a career mom, was the breadwinner until I was divorced, and then was the sole provider. And she sadly, but recently went through a divorce and was moving from being at home caring for the children to moving to working again outside the home. Through that process, I could not believe how little she knew about how much the mortgage was, where certain documentation was, how the retirement investment was, et cetera. And so one of the first things I did was set her up with my financial planner, just to have just an education, let's just start with the basics. And so think about that agency, putting your agency around your entire financial future at home in someone else's hands and not having. And I know based on, your origin story, that was something that was so motivational for you.
And I always say it's not, I mean, it's unfortunate divorce happens, and, I'm a big believer that it's better to have a divorce than live miserable forever after. As women, let's take it to the next step. If you're not willing to give yourself those 7 minutes for yourself, do it for your children, because they are watching, they're learning, and then you want to teach them, both boys and girls, that they can sit down and figure out for a little bit, is this working for me? Am I enjoying this? Am I having fun? Recently, my goal is to have more fun, to laugh more, to be playful, to enjoy everything you do more.
Yeah.
And but it's not like you're just going to start laughing like a psychopath. It's you
right.
need to figure out,
right.
Really,
yeah,
what is it that makes you happy, and what is it that doesn't serve, in relationships, friendships, past, making time to explore new things, going to new places, what's important to you, and teaching your kids that it's fine to stop and, I don't want to say smell the roses, but stop and figure out, are you happy?
Yes. And demonstrating that unapologetic, guilt-free investment in yourself is necessary, worthy, important. That's another lesson, right? That we teach the next generation, is that it's not selfish to spend time investing in yourself. It's important. It's part of really living into being your best self, to living into the huge potential that we all have. And on the note of the 7-minute pivot, for the person listening that's saying, well, I know what my next is, and I'm already working on my, on my next. On my website, I have for free 21 prompts, because you made me think of it when we were talking about joy. It might be, what are all what is keeping me from feeling my greatest sense of joy right now? You could spend 7 minutes journaling. Why that? Why that? Why that? What's one small thing I can do today to move slightly more toward joy, right? So there's lots of prompts. It's sort of like, what's on my heart this morning that's standing in my way of a fully fulfilling day, week, life? And what's one little thing I can do to pivot in a more positive direction? So if you're thinking, well, that prompt doesn't resonate, but I like the idea of the clarity and focus that comes with the reflection and action, there are plenty of ideas available.
There are more ideas than excuses, I would think.
Yes, for sure. Sure.
So let's think of a week one blueprint. So today starts, let's say it's Monday and it's the right time, and somebody says, that's it, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I need to shift something. I have no idea what. What are the first 5 to 7 actions that they should take in order to change their mindset, figure out their careers, their relationship, investments, to align their human capital with their life and arguably financial goals?
Yeah. So I think one of the very first steps is taking an inventory of your human capital, because we're humble and we're oftentimes operating on autopilot. And so we know our skills and knowledge. That's an easier thing for us to talk about, right? Well, I went to school for this and I'm pretty good at, Excel or whatever it is. Skills and knowledge. So the things we know and the things that we can practice and demonstrate, those things come pretty readily to mind. What most people don't spend time thinking about and getting introspective about as a very first step is, what are my natural gifts and talents? And here's a really easy way to understand that. Now, there's all kinds of really awesome structured behavioral validated tools on the market, right? That help you uncover that. But if you don't want to go spend the 18 or the whatever dollars, here's how you can source that for yourself. When you're in an area of natural talent, these 4 things simultaneously are happening. Number 1, I do this thing spontaneously. I can't help myself. If you're the person that walks into a busy conference or an event and looks around at the chaos and says, if they put a stanchion there and a stanchion there and added one more person, this would be so much more organized, right? Spontaneous. You didn't have to have any forethought. It just naturally comes to you. That's what I mean by spontaneity. It's consistent. It always happens. It's not like sometimes I see those things, other times I don't. It's consistent. You do it with excellence. People come to you because they know that you're particularly good at creativity, strategy, problem solving, conflict resolution, right? Those kinds of attributes. They come to you because they know you're really good at that. And the most important that has to be, it feels good when you're doing it, right? It's affirming. So we can do lots of things that we don't love doing. And then there's those things that at the end of a busy day or at the end of a busy week, you go, that was such a great day. When I ask people, what was great about it? Well, I really leaned into this major problem and I figured out the thing that was creating all the confusion. That is when you know you're operating in a place of talent. So it's ACEs spelled backwards, right? It's affirming with excellence. It's consistent and spontaneous. I think I did that in the right order. But anyway, it's ACEs, as opposed to spaces, which are the things that don't come naturally. So the very first things is that understand where your talents are. And then the next step is, what are the kinds of jobs, positions, opportunities that would allow me to live in that space more than maybe I do right now? There was a time early in my career where I was in training and development. I was developing a lot of our training materials and educating and so on. And we started selling our training products externally, and they would take me on these sales calls because I authored the materials. So I could speak about them because I knew them inside and out. Well, what would happen is the client would then say, well, we want Cynthia to teach it. Well, it's just because they met me and I knew the material, right? But my employer wanted to put me in a sales position because I was closing a lot of deals. I hated sales. I didn't want to be in sales. That wasn't my gift. And so what happened is I left to find a job that was more aligned with my natural gifts and talents. So third thing, then what is your next? Identify it, name it. Next, pick a timeline. You get to choose. Are you in a toxic situation? So you'd like that to happen within 6 to 9 months? Do you have some time? Is that 2 to 3 years? Pick a date and then put your blueprint together. That is the baby steps to get you there from now to near to next. But you have to start working on your future today, because here's the other thing women in particular do. We say, when the kids go off to school, when the kids graduate college, when my significant other lands their dream job. We have all of these reasons that we kick the can down the road. So start working on your future today, even just 7 minutes.
I love it. And the other thing I also think is important to acknowledge is, and we talk about it from the financial planning side of things, and what's important for you today could change in the future.
Yes.
So don't be so tough or fixated on one outcome, because things change. So have a vision, work towards it, get a blueprint. From my world, it's like a financial blueprint, intergenerational planning, all these conversations. But if things change, it's okay to change.
Absolutely. You can, I call it a blueprint as well. You can actually download for free the PDF blueprint to get you started. So you have a place to take and put your work on paper. We talk about the base camp model. It's exactly what you were just referring to, which is in chapter 9, actually. We talk about this. Pick your next, pick a date certain, build your blueprint of how you're going to get there. You don't have to race. It's not, you get there on your timeline. But depending on your timeline, it may be monthly. If it's a longer timeline, maybe it's quarterly, but you pull over just as if you were trying to summit a mountain. You pull over to base camp and you reassess. What are the headwinds? What's happened in my life that I didn't anticipate? What new information can I bring to my journey now? And maybe my destination remains the same, but how I'm going to get there, I need to chart a new path. I need to pivot a different direction to get to where I'm going. And frankly, sometimes life's messy and we say, I need to change my destination altogether, right? And that happens. Life can be very messy. So you're right. You have to give yourself permission to check in every now and then and make sure that your route still makes sense.
And where do you hear the word failure? Because if you change your path, is it failure or is it change of path? Or how do you incorporate that in your conversations?
Yeah, I mean, so much of it is it's the narrative we tell ourselves, right? I mean, is it failure that I'm working with with some fifth generation in a family business, so younger folks, college age individuals. Well, I named this as my major, so now I'm trying to find jobs in this. Well, does that light your fire? Because if it doesn't, I have a broadcasting and film degree. That is not where my career ended up going. Is that a failure? Or is that, what could I take from my communications background that I could pull into the work that I do? So I think so much of it has to do with how are you framing it in your mind. Yeah, I've been very public. My last corporate position, I was the chief administrative officer for a very large health system in the US. And we went through a CEO change, which I was quite aware of, had actually helped plan the succession over a decade because in my part of my role. And my position was eliminated as part of the change of control. A lot of people would look at that as failure, right? 13 years with a company, pinnacle of my career, really thought that I would sort of ride that out until my encore. But that isn't what happened. What happened was new CEO wanted to go in a different direction. And when I looked at that, it was like, okay, the summit that I was heading toward has changed, right? That destination doesn't exist anymore. And so therefore, here I am at base camp. Now what? Now what? Fortunately, because I had been working on my future today, and mind you, my whole career up into researching and writing my first book was luck, serendipity, right place, right time.
Right.
But because of the research, because I learned that women are not as intentional, I decided to drink my own champagne and to build my future next, which was going to be 3 to 5 years from now when I went into my encore career post corporate. So I had my coaching certification. I had my first book in editing. I had been building my thought leadership. So when that rug was pulled out from under me, I had an option. I didn't only have the option of going and finding another needle in the haystack of a C-suite job as a single empty nester, having to relocate and all that came with it. I actually had traction towards something that I was building for my future. And so I accelerated it. But I will tell you, my conviction to the framework is because I lived it. And it was kind of like, oh, thank goodness that I had done this research and I did the thing, because how many women and men don't?
Yeah, and it's discipline. It's self-discipline to do it.
Exactly.
So, Cynthia, last question.
Yes.
For you in this season, what does having your house in order look like in your work, relationships, and self?
Such a good question. Well, I think happiness and joy are huge. So, for me, when I feel that my house is in order, it is that I have peace in my relationships, peace in my financial situation, peace in my physical health, mental health, etc. But I would leave the listeners with this. It requires intentionality. Having your house in order, and I sort of believe that is a very comprehensive spiritual health, mental health, financial health, etc. Requires intentionality. If you are going through life on autopilot, I don't believe you can have your house in order. You are allowing somebody else to determine whether or not your house is in order. So be intentional.
Awesome. Okay, so now for a little bit of fun, lightning round.
Okay.
One belief you refuse to compromise on about people or performance.
I refuse to compromise on this notion that everybody can be trained to be good at anything. I believe each person has natural gifts and talents, and that's where we need to double down instead of trying to put in what God left out.
Okay. A book other than yours or framework that has shaped your thinking.
Yeah, I love Amy Edmondson's work. She is prolific on psychological safety. And I'm looking over here. So The Right Kind of Wrong is her latest book. She really empowers organizations, individuals, leaders to create a culture where you can point out when something isn't right or is going to potentially cause harm. And coming out of healthcare most recently, I think that is just sage advice.
Okay. And worst professional advice you've received and how you unlearned it.
Ooh, that is so good. So I was told one time that I made a lot of money for somebody as young as I was. And you can believe that for a minute until you realize that if you're performing at the level of people senior to you, you are deserving and your human capital is worth the value of what you're putting into it. So I think that understanding that age alone, and now I'm on the other side of it, right? Now I'm at the age where it's easier to discount women over 50 and what they bring to the party. So I think age has an inverse correlation to predicting performance. And I think once we realize that and realize that there are some Gen Zs out there that are absolutely brilliant and running circles around folks with many more years of experience, and there's a lot of men and women over 50 that are just getting started.
Fantastic. So here is what Cynthia and I want you to carry with you. Your most under-leveraged asset isn't your bank account. It's you. And when you invest in your mind, your skill, your voice, your influence, your foundation becomes unshakable. Don't wait for someone to validate you, promote you, or rescue you. Take the first step, those little 7 minutes. This week, build your agency. Start with who you are, what you want. Maybe start with your financial clarity. Start with something. Take that first step. Share this with someone who believes that the system owes them something. Show them, challenge them, and build your part first. I'm Elke Rubach. This is Get Your House in Order. Until next time, own your weight, build your voice, and lead with intentionality. Thank you very much, Cynthia. A pleasure.